Hello aspirant, today I am going to crack UPSC 2015's passage, only passage, that's mean reading and comprehensions. So please attentions. So first question, so which among the following is the most logical corollary to the above passage? So what is asked by the questions? Logical corollary. So we need to first understand the passage and read passage very slowly and understand in one time reading. So I going to read it. Climate change is already making many people hungry all over the world. So by disrupting crop yields and pushing up prices, and it is not just food but nutrients that are becoming scarcer as the climate change. So what is says this portion? This portion says the climate change changes effects. It is the poorest communities that will suffer the worst effects of climate change, including increased hunger and malnutrition as crop productions and livelihoods are threatened. So what is the said by these portions? These portions says only the poorest sections are suffered most by malnutrition and all other problems. On the other hand, poverty is a driver of climate change as desperate communities resort to unsustainable use of resources to meet current need. So unsustainable resources used, that is also problematic. So what is the most corollary logical corollary? So option number one, government should allocate more funds more fund to poverty alleviations programs and increase food subsidies to the poor communities. Option 2, poverty and climate impacts reinforce each others and therefore we have to reimagine our food systems. All the countries of the world must unite in fighting poverty and malnutrition and treat poverty as a global problem. We must stop unsustainable agricultural practices immediately and control food prices. So, what is the most logical corollary? We need to understand full passage, then we come in the conclusions. That's most logical corollary is B. Poverty and climate impacts reinforce each others and therefore we have to reimagine our food systems. So all the aspects, food systems, climate impacts and poverty, all are here in this option, so we make it correct. So we go to passage 2. After going passage 2, we need to understand the questions. Which among the following is the most rational and critical inference that can be made from the above passage? So rational and critical inference we need to find out in this passage. So we need to first understand the passage very fastly. The Global Financial Stability Reports finds that the share of portfolio investments from advanced economies in the total debt and equity investments in emerging economies has doubled in the past decades to 12%. So this portion is totally economics affairs. So the phenomena has implications for Indian policy makers as foreign portfolio investments in the debt and equity markets have been on the rise. The phenomena is also flagged as a threat that could compromise global financial stability in a chain reactions. In the events of United States Federal Reserve's imminent reversals of its quantitative easing policy. So there was, we know the globals markets up downs. So what is the most rationals and critical inference? Option number A, foreign portfolio investments are not good for emerging economies. Advanced economies undermine the global financial stability. India should desist from accepting foreign portfolio investments in the futures. Emerging economies are at a risk of shock from advanced economies. So what is the answer? Question 42. Answer is very easy. Answer is D. Emerging economies are at a risk of shock from advanced economies. So when advanced economies comes and invest any developing country, and when there's a quantitative easing is policy reverse their amount, they take all the money from the markets, then our share markets are collapses, and people who are uh, in share markets, they get losses, they face losses. So it was affecting our economy. Passage 3. Passage 3, there is need to question, so which among the following is the most critical inference that can be made from the above passage? So we need to know the passage. Open defecations. Open defecations is disastrous when practiced in very densely populated areas where it is impossible to keep away human faces from crops, oils, foods, and children's hands. Groundwater is also contaminated by open defecation. So, what is coming in these portions? Open defecations is very dangerous for peoples, mainly dense area. So many ingesteds, germs and worms spread diseases. They prevent the body from absorbing calories and nutrients. Nearly one half of India's children remain malnourished. Lakhs of them die from preventable conditions. Preventable conditions. Diarrhea leaves Indians' bodies smaller on average than those of people in some poorer countries where people eat fewer calories, underweights, mother produce stunted habits, prone to sickness, who may fail to develop their full cognitive potentials. The germs released into environments harm rich and poor alike, even those who are latrines. So what to understand by these questions? If questions the say how open defecations affected peoples, affecting malnutritions, affecting germs, so what are getting all portions of nutritions. So we understands everything by the portions of statements. So first statements, the central and state governments in India do not have enough resources to afford a latrine for each household. Open defecation is the most important public health problem in India. Open defecation reduces the human capital of Indian workforce. Open defecation is a public health problem in all developing countries. So question number 43 answer is C, most critical inference, that is open defecation reduces the human capital of Indian workforce. That is the most critical inference. So we go to next passage. Thumbs up of the above passage. We generally talks about democracy, but so when it comes to any particular things, we prefer to belonging to our caste or community or religions. So long as we have these kinds of temptations, our democracy will remain a phony kinds of democracy. We must be in a position to respect a man as a man and to extend opportunities for developments to those who deserves them and not to those who happen to belong to our community or race. These facts of favoritism has been responsible for much discontents and ill will in our country. So, what to understand by the state this passage? This passage is says how democracy is affected by communalisms, caste, and community favoritisms, etc. So, question is which one of the following statements best sum up the above passage? So, first options, our country has a lot of diversity with its many castes, communities, and religions. True democracy could be established by providing equal opportunities to all. So far, none of us have actually understood the meaning of democracy. It will never be possible for us to est- establish truly democracy governance in our country. So question number 44 answer is very easy. Answer is B. True democracy could be established by providing equal opportunities to all. That is the main saying by the passage. So we go to next passage, passage number 5. The existence, establishments of formal financial institutions that offer safe, reliable and alternative financial instruments is fundamental in mobilizing savings. To saves, individuals need access to safe and reliable financial institutions such as banks and to appropriate financial instruments and reasonable financial incentives. So this portion is saying the financial banks and financial systems. Such access is not always available to all people in developing countries like India and some more. So in rural areas, savings help poor households, manages volatility in cash flow, smoothens consumptions and build working capitals. Poor households without access to a formal savings mechanisms encourage immediate spending temptations. So this person says what is the benefits of banking. We go for questions. Question number 45. With reference to the above passages, consider the following statements. First statements, Indian financial institutions do not offer any financial instruments to rural households to mobilize their savings. Poor households tend to spend their earnings savings due to lack of access to appropriate financial instruments. So which of the statement is are correct? So question number 45 answer is B, 2 only. That means poor households tend to spend their earnings savings due to lack of access to appropriate financial instrument. That is, these questions come in 2015, and this according to this passage, this question is this is the answer. Question number 46. So what is the crucial message conveyed in the passage? Establish more banks, increase the gross domestic products growth rate GDP, increase the interest rates of bank deposits, promote financial inclusions. So what is the answer? Answer is very easy. Answer is D. This passage say promote financial inclusions. That means everybody need to use the financial systems. Question number 6. Governments may have to take steps which would otherwise be an infringement on the fundamental rights of individuals, such as acquiring a person's land against his will or refusing permissions for putting up a buildings. But the larger public interest for which these are done must be authorized by the people parliament. Discretionary power to the administrations can be done away with. It is becoming more and more difficult to keep these powers within limits as the government has many number of tasks of perform. So what do you understand by these questions? So where discretion has to be used, there must be rules and safeguards to prevent misuse of that powers. Systems have to be devised which minimize, if not prevent, the abuse of discretionary power. Government's works must be conducted without a framework of recognized rules and principles, and decisions should be similar and predictable. So, question number 47. So, which among the following is the most logical assumptions that can be made from the above passage? Option number A. Government should always be given wide discretionary power in all matters of administrations. The supremacy of rules and safeguards should prevail as opposed to the influence of exclusive discretions of authority. Parliamentary democracy is possible only if the government has wider discretionary powers. None of the above statement is a logical assumptions that can be made from this passage. So question number 47 answer is B. The supremacy of rules and safeguards should prevail as opposed to the influence of exclusive discretions on authority. So when we attempt these types of questions, we need to cool our brain. If we use our brains very fast, then we must do wrong decisions, take wrong decisions. So we need to first cool our brain and read carefully, and if you have time, read twice, and after that you come in the decisions what is the right options. So we have the next passage. India has suffered from persistent high inflations, increase in administered prices, demands and supply imbalances, imported inflations aggravated by rupee depreciations and speculations have combined to keep high inflations going. If there is an element common to all of them, it is that many of them are the outcomes of economic reforms. India's vulnerability to the effects of changes in international prices has increased with trade liberalizations. The efforts to reduce subsidies has resulted in a continuous increase in the prices of commodities that are administered. So what is the understand by the passage? This passage say the inflations, price hikes, all the aspects. So question is, so what is the most logical, rational and crucial message that is implied in the above passage, sorry. Option number A, under the present circumstances, India should completely avoid all trade liberalizations policies and all subsidies. Due to its peculiar socio-economic situations, India is not yet ready for trade liberalization process. There is no solutions in sight for the problems of continuing poverty and inflations in India in the near futures. Economic reforms can often create a high inflations economy. So question number 61 answer is D. Economic reforms can often create a high inflations economy. Question number passage 2. No right is absolute, exclusive or inviolable. The right of personal property similarly has to be perceived in the larger context of its assumes legitimacy. The right of personal property should unite the principles of liberty with that of equality and both with the principles of cooperations. What to understand by the passage? In the light of the arguments in the above passage, which one of the following statement is our most convincing explanations? The right of personal property is a natural right duly supported by statutes and scriptures. Personal property is a theft and an instrument of exploitations. The rights of personal property is therefore violatives of economic justice. The rights of personal property is violative of distributive justice and negates the principles of cooperations. The comprehensive ideas of economic justice demands that the rights of each person to acquisitions of property has to be reconciles with that of others. So question number 62, answer is D. The comprehensive idea of economic justice demands that the right of each person to acquisitions of property has to be reconciled with that of others. So we go to passage 3. The conflict between man and state is as old as state's history. Although attempts have been made for centuries to bring about a proper adjustments between the competing claims of states and the individuals, the solution seems to be still far off. This is primarily because of the dynamic natures of human society, where old values and ideas constantly yield place to new ones. It is obvious that if individuals are allowed to have absolute freedoms of speech and actions, the results would be chaos, ruin, and anarchy. So, what to understand by this passage? This passage is very relevant in today's life. The states and individuals are conflicts, and what it says, this says actually freedom of speech when actually implemented, then there was chaos, ruins, and anarchy was situated. So the author's viewpoints can be best summed up in which of the following statements: the conflict between the claims of states and individuals remains unresolved. Anarchy and chaos are the obvious result of democratic traditions. Old values, ideas, and traditions persist despite the dynamic natures of human society. Constitutional guarantees of freedom of speech is not in the interest of society. So question number 63, answer is very easy. Answer is A. The conflict between the claims of states and individuals remains unresolved. So when you see the history, you can see the same, and present time also you get the same situations. Passage 4. Climate change is a complex policy issue with major implications in terms of finance. All actions to address climate change ultimately involves cost. Funding is vital for countries like India to design and implement adaptations and mitigations plans and projects. So what is the understand by this portion? This portion says climate change impacts and how to mitigate. Lack of funding is a large implementing adaptations plans. The scales and implementing adaptations plans, the scales and magnitudes of the financial supports required by developing countries to enhance their domestic mitigations and adaptations actions are a matters of interest. Matters of interest debates in the multilateral negotiations under the United Nations Framework Connections on Climate Change UNFCCC. The conventions squarely puts the responsibility for provisions of financial supports on the developed countries, taking into account their contributions to the stock of greenhouse gases in the atmospheres. Given the magnitude of the task and the funds required, domestic finances are likely to fall short of the current and projected needs of the developing countries. Global funding to the multilateral mechanisms of the conventions will enhance their domestic capacity to finance the mitigations efforts. So, what to understand by the passage? This passage says, and the question was, according to the passage, which of the following is are a matter of intense debates in the multilateral negotiations under UNFCCC regarding the role of developing countries in climate change? Option number 1, statements on the scales and size of required financial supports. 2, the crop loss due to climate change in the developing countries to enhance the mitigations and adaptations actions in the developing countries. Select the correct answer using the codes given below. So question number 64 answer is C. That means 1 and 3 option is correct. The scales and size of required financial supports to enhance the mitigations and adaptations actions is the developing countries. The crop loss due to climate change is the developing countries. This is not correct. The next question is, in this passage, the conventions put the responsibility for the provisions of financial support on the developed countries because of 1. Their higher levels of per capita income, their large quantum of GDP, their large contributions of the stocks of GHG in the atmosphere. So the correct answer is the codes given below. So question number 65 answer is very easy. Answer is C. That means only 3. There are large contributions to the stocks of GHG in the atmospheres. So you know GHG meanings is stock of greenhouse gases. Question number 66. With regards to developing countries, it can be inferred from the passage that climate change is likely to have implications in their domestic finances, capacity for multilateral trade. Select the correct answer in the codes given below. So question number 66 answer is A1. That means domestic finances. Question number 67. Which one of the following is essentially discussed in the passage? Conflict between developed and developing countries regarding supports or mitigations, occurrences of climate changes due to excessive exploitations of natural resources by the developed countries, lack of political will on the part of all the countries to implement adaptations plans, government problems of developing countries, a result of climate change. So question number 67 answer is A. Conflict between developed and developing countries regarding support for mitigations. We go for next passage, but unfortunately our session was end here because all passages we completed. So thank you for attending this class. PYQ is very important. You need to learn it and you need to very carefully decide so what option is right and what option is wrong. Thank you. Jai Hind, Vande Mataram. Best wishes for my side.